What caused the natural disaster in Cormac McCarthy's The Road? And I've seen speculation for years now on the internet on if it was a volcano or a nuclear fallout. But today we are going to hear from Cormac McCarthy himself, the authority on the issue, on what exactly happened in The Road. And my name is Ian, and here on Right Conscious, we cover everything related to Cormac McCarthy. In the playlist down below, you will find over 190 videos on Cormac McCarthy, which is the biggest deep dive ever into an author in BookTube history. But enough for me, everybody. Let us now hear from McCarthy. A lot of people ask me, I don't have an opinion. At the Santa Fe Institute, I'm with scientists of all disciplines, and some of them in geology said it looked like a meteor to them, but it could be anything, volcanic activity, or it could be nuclear war. It is not really important. The whole thing now is, what do you do? The last time the caldera in Yellowstone blew, the entire North American continent was under about a foot of ash. People who've gone diving in Yellowstone Lake say that there is a bulge in the floor that is now about 100 feet high, and the whole thing is a sort of pulsing. From different people, you get different answers, but it could go in another 3,000 to 4,000 years, or it could go on Thursday. No one knows. So there we have it, everybody, and I know that's not the answer you wanted, because as McCarthy said, now what do you do now that we are living in this world of ash and fallout? What happens? And I think that's why The Road is such a successful novel commercially, because people have a dystopian tick. People are scared, the election is coming up. There's always something to be worried about. But now let's actually explore some of the theories that McCarthy kind of refuses to talk about. So the main one is the Yellowstone caldera theory, that the Yellowstone volcano would blow up. But even though that's what most people believe, that theory has some holes. And this is why I think McCarthy says it doesn't matter, because he doesn't make anything definitive. So what are some of the symptoms of what's going on? So there's constant falling ash, there's blocked out sunlight, there's no natural blue sky, and all the plants are dead, except mushrooms. And there are these firestorms, and they come across bodies that are burned into the pavement. And so when you look at it from this angle, it seems like the volcano, right? Like the Yellowstone volcano blew up, and McCarthy just mentioned it. But there's a problem with that theory. When you look at the blast radius of the Yellowstone volcano, it would have a global impact for decades. But it wouldn't kill off the global population. And so The Road is taking place in America, but I think that years after this fallout started to occur, if the rest of the world was still somewhat moving, that they would try some form of a humanitarian mission to rescue people in North and South America. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they don't give a damn about us and would just leave us over here. But I get the feeling that the entire world is in a fallout in The Road. And so I think a better theory than the volcanic eruption theory would be a meteor strike. In 2,900 years ago, we entered the Younger Dryas, which was a sudden cooling in the northern hemisphere. Like, for instance, here in North America, there was a drop in almost an instant of 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit every single year, which, depending on where you were at, could cause major problems. But there are theories out there that this ice age, this cooling period, was caused by a meteor impact, and that's why there was such a devastation of life and all this stuff on Earth. We don't exactly know, but to keep nerding out, does a meteor cause an electromagnetic pulse to knock the power out? Because the clock stopped and the power went out when this event occurred. And two of the three parts of an EMP, E1 and E2, are produced by gamma rays, which wouldn't be produced by a meteor. But the E3 component, which is the main article, could be manifested by the plasma in a meteor explosion, which could distort the geomagnetic field lines and thus cause power outages and clock stopping. To further the meteor theory, when the event occurs, quote, the man sees a long shear of light, end quote. And so that doesn't necessarily seem like a volcanic eruption. That is probably more in the nuclear bomb or meteor strike theory. But I've also been thinking that a meteor strike of that size, that no matter where it was, to cause kind of a global fallout like that, would have to be huge and basically kill almost everybody, because it seems like it seems like there's a significant amount of people still alive. Like, people are dying every single day. There are people on the road, but they had neighbors that killed themselves. It seems like, I don't know the exact number. Maybe comment down below. What percentage of America do you think is still alive or could be alive if they didn't kill themselves or didn't get killed in this event? I think most of the death is occurring because of kind of the anarchy and carnage that is going on. Another problem is with the volcano and the meteor theory is if there was an impact like that, then there would be some form of recovery. You know, the fallout doesn't last forever. Like plants and stuff, life finds a way. And it seems like there is no possibility of recovery, which signals more to like a more apocalyptic end of days, maybe even spiritual take on all this. McCarthy says it doesn't matter. I don't know. And maybe that's just because he made it so extreme that it just actually has no logical explanation. And speaking of illogical explanations, before we can hop into the nuclear theory now, which I think is just as strong. So the main one is the clocks, right? So the clock stop, which is from an EMP. Because if you look at the state of the environment, it's a fallout. Plus, there's certain trees that McCarthy describes throughout the novel that are all tilted in the same direction. That feels like, to me, a nuclear blast came and swept them. I mean, I guess a meteor blast could do that. But if there was ash, they would probably be falling in different directions. Another thing is that a lot of the cities are destroyed, and that could be from anarchy. But if we're talking about the Yellowstone caldera explosion, it wouldn't cause that type of damage over in the Northeast. And where would a lot of the nuclear bombs and nuclear fallout occur? It would occur up in the Northeast. That's where a lot of them are going to be getting sent. And if the meteor had hit and we were at that level, the entire city would be destroyed. And when we look at a lot of the symptoms, we have vomiting, fever, coughing, blood, a lot of the stuff, and those are the symptoms of radiation. And before we dive into more schizo theories, tomorrow the Right Conscious Book Club is going to start reading The Road. But we are also reading, or about to start, 5 other Cormac McCarthy novels. Plus, we are reading 16 other novels because the Right Conscious Book Club is the most active book club in the world. You also get access to all the archived book club calls too. We're doing a bunch of fun stuff. For instance, if you are a writer and want to do the Blood Meridian for Writers course, I have weekly assignments that you can do, writing assignments you can do with the group, and I show you guys how Cormac McCarthy composed some of his best scenes in Blood Meridian. And even better than that, show you a lot of secrets that I've figured out over the past 15 years of reading McCarthy. You also get access to daily podcasts on a wide variety of topics, daily office hours, the Cormac McCarthy course, the David Foster Wallace course, and a bunch of other cool stuff. If you want to support the channel, I would love to have you guys over there. If you want to read books with a group and be encouraged and motivated to read things outside of your comfort zone, we are reading books like Infinite Jest, Gravity's Rainbow, and a bunch of other hard books. We're reading very easy books. Books for men like Iron John, King Magician, Warrior Lover, Sun and Steel. When you read 20 books at once, you can do a lot. So I'd love to see you guys over there, and let's get back to the video. So let's talk about the most schizo theory that I can think of, because there is kind of a foreshadowing that there was going to be an event. Like some of the characters and some of the kind of past remembrance makes it seem like they knew something was going to happen, like they were waiting for it. And so why not combine both theories together? That what if a huge meteor was coming toward Earth? Like what if it was about to happen? Well, our main line of defense, and this has been talked about ad infinitum, is nuclear weapons. So what if we sent nuclear weapons, hundreds of them, thousands of them, everything we have? I mean, we have thousands, Russia has thousands. What if we sent the whole arsenal to try and destroy this meteor and it didn't work? That maybe causes the EMP aspect of the clock stopping, but then the meteor hits the Earth and then causes this big fallout because the nuclear bomb thing didn't necessarily work. Like I said, not the most elegant point, but unfortunately, with both theories, there isn't one of them that satisfies the entire picture. But I think people become obsessed with this concept because it's much easier to focus on this than what actually would happen in a situation like this. Because the reason we have a government, the reason we are living in a democratic or whatever society is because we cannot control ourselves. All democracy is us electing people to have moral authority over us, to be morally, who we view that they are morally superior than us, and they have to give us moral instruction and have a group of people with guns and badges enforce their moral authority. And it's so bad, I don't even know the percentage of people who actually have enough emotional, intellectual, and physical and spiritual control to be able to live on principles. But the number can't be very high. And it gets lower every single year, which is insane. And so a situation like this is really scary because in an ideal society, in an ideal place, if we all had principles, we all had self-control, even during the most crazy fallout situation, we would be able to at least cobble something together and have some semblance of control and unity. That's the whole point of it. It's not for the peaceful times. It's for when things start to get chaotic. Like, I believe that there is an a priori principle that as human beings, we have the freedom to experiment with our own consciousness in the way that we want, even with our own body in the way that we want. And so I don't think that any drug should be illegal. But I have known, like, one of my best friends died from an overdose. And I had other friends who shared similar sentiments. But then when that happened, they were like, oh my God, this fentanyl thing is so bad, yada, yada, yada. That should be illegal. I'm like, no, that doesn't matter. I'm maintaining my principles, even if it personally affects me. That's the point of principles. And when you don't have to take actually any action in society, when you can just walk through the lines, get a degree, get a job, and if you're just a good little boy, everything's fine, then you actually never need any principles or any integrity. When you can just ghost girls and lock your door, and, you know, if they come knocking, they're psycho and crazy, and you can get a restraining order on them and not answer and not, you know, have to deal with their brother or their dad. Life's really easy, right? And that's one of the interesting aspects of The Road that the boy and the father have, is that they don't want to become cannibals. That they're, even though they've reached a really bad situation, they're going to at least try to rely on their first principles of that we shouldn't become cannibals. That is inherently wrong. And these principles are the most important thing that we should be teaching out in the world, because no one believes in objective morality, which is whatever. Everyone's like, all the logic bros, all the people, rah, rah. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you don't believe in objective morality. It's the only actual logical thing that we can do to actually create principles again in society. Because if we don't, all we can rely on is the state. All we can rely on is the government. I understand. Don't worry. I've read philosophy. I understand about the destruction of absolutism and yada, yada, yada. But I don't give a shit about what a bunch of random continental philosophers did and what they cared about, because some of them were actually Nazis, but a lot of them weren't actually thinking of the future, weren't actually thinking of what was actually important in situations like this, or like the situations we are heading toward. All the nerds online, all the random people who bash on any form of objective morality, most of the time actually have no form of integrity. When they look back at their life, it is them not being held accountable for anything. Because all across the United States, over the course of a child's education, easily over $100,000 is spent on it. And when you calculate how much parents spend and all of that, kids will spend 10,000 hours plus into school and have over $150,000 spent on their education. And 99% of them, when they graduate, have no principles and have no moral integrity, have no emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual control of themselves. And now every single year, with declining test scores in all different categories and declining social skills and even declining relationships, like between students and like understanding, you know, that type of stuff, that's all on the decline. So it's like, wait, what is this money being spent on? Because for a long time, education was about the reading, the writing, the math, because at home, those principles most of the time were being taught. So now we've lost that completely, because we're free now. We're not constrained by religion or anything. And now the education has gone down the rabbit hole. And so we don't need a nuclear fallout. We don't need a meteor hit to have the reality that is in The Road. We are reaching the point where of instability and lack of education and lack of emotional control of, you know, the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution. But we have a surveillance state and a military and militarized police that would prevent a lot of that from actually happening. But it's very odd living in a world that, you know, and in a country that if it was 150 years ago, we would probably be in a massive civil war already. And so we aren't that far away from this reality. And what I think of when I read The Road, what I think of when I hear Cormac McCarthy talk about The Road, and there are a bunch of other quotes that I'm covering over on the Substack, is that he says it's not that important to be smart. The most important thing is to be a good person. And so what are you doing? I'm bringing this back to you right now. I know this is the first law of YouTube. Never look back, never look at the viewer in the eye, get inside their ear and say, what are you doing with all this intellectual knowledge that you have? You've read enough books. You're probably a damn good writer. You could write a pretty impactful blog post or a short story or a poem right now. You could probably speak pretty well, better than 9 out of 10 people. What are you doing with all that? And if you're not doing anything, then what's the point of your life? How are you any different than anybody else? And if you think that you're the same and that's okay, then cool. But for us to become better, there has to be people who are already better and know that they are better to help get everyone to their level. A coach doesn't say, hey, we're all the same. You and I, we're all the same skill level. You just don't understand how to kick that soccer ball. You don't understand how to do any plays, but you and I, we're the same in terms of soccer. You just had a hard life, man. You're 7 years old. You just haven't had the time. Your mom was gone. Like that's the excuse we make for people who don't have emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual control of themselves and haven't reached the baseline yet. That they're not worse than anybody else. They just had a hard life. They haven't had an opportunity with the 78 hours of free time they have every week. The 68 hours. The tens of thousands of hours of free time they've had in their life so far. They haven't been able to read a couple books, work out a little bit, meditate or pray, eat a little bit better, actually learn to emotionally connect with other people. It's not their fault. It's the government's fault. It's someone's fault. And if we keep having that mentality, then the people who could actually awaken and activate and make people better will just be complacent because they will think that it doesn't matter. And they'll be scared to step into that role because they'll be seen as arrogant. They'll be seen as having a superiority complex. And when I think of all the massive changes I've made in my life, it's been from direct people criticizing me and saying, hey, Ian, you need to get this together. I remember when I was my first roommate experience, I was like, my room was unclean and all this stuff. And my roommate sat with me. He's like, dude, I'm going to throw you out if you can't get this together right now. And like, dude, this isn't high school anymore. You're not living at your mom's house. Like, you need to pull it together right now. You need to stop partying so much and like focus. And we need to maintain a certain standard. And like, I love you, man. You're my best friend. But like, this has gotten out of control. And like, I will kick you out of my life if you can't get this together. And I was mad. It didn't feel great, but I got it together. The same's happened with my writing, with my reading, with my speaking ability, with in my relationships, in my friendships, at my job. It's all been from direct. It hasn't been from the easy, well going, great job. It hasn't, it's called the feedback sandwich. Like, hey, if your name's Johnny, hey, Johnny, you're a great listener right now. You're a great reader, but maybe you could think about writing a blog sometime. But if not, then you're still a really good person and maybe one day you can do it. Instead of saying, hey, Johnny, you're lazy. You think that you can't help anybody or that no one else needs your help and that someone else is going to do it. You're leaving the job up to someone else when you are the only person in the world with your unique capacity of skills to impact a unique group of people. And if you don't do it, that group of people will never be awakened in the way they need to be awakened. And this relates to the road because if we don't do this as individuals, as the people who are actually reading and thinking and growing, then we are totally fucked, everybody. If there is any form of disaster, any form of problem, you better be prepped, you better be ready, you better have AK-47s and be ready to shoot anybody and everybody because we are going to be fucked. And with global internet now and scalable mediums like YouTube and blogs and things like that, we have an opportunity to do that. Through social incentives, we have an opportunity to change things right now before things get too crazy, before AI shuts down too many people. But what are you going to do? Do you want to live in the world of the road? Do you want your children's children to live in that world? Or do you want something better? Think about it, everybody. Think about your life. If you don't want to do anything, whatever. I'll be out here putting in the work every single day. I love each and every one of you, and I will see you guys in the next video very soon.